So my first question is to you, Gudrun. Why is confidence so important in the profession, and do we have a crisis at the moment in the veterinary profession around confidence?
I think what's important about confidence is it's one of the indicators that we've been looking at, knowing that we have a workforce challenge and a workforce crisis, to try and improve retention, try and improve our work-life balance, try and improve our motivation and our ambition. So confidence is one of those key underpinning areas, and I think that's what's really exciting about what we've been doing in the British Veterinary Association and the University of Exeter, is it's not just saying we've got a problem, it's why have we got a problem, and confidence has come out and actually is giving us some practical tips.
And this I'll throw open to anyone who wants to answer it, but how big an issue is gender? Is it all about gender, the confidence crisis?
I'll pass to Michelle and Chris.
I mean, I don't think it's all about gender. I think there's obviously individual differences. Some people feel more confident than others, and I think anyone that has issues with confidence we need to address. But I think the research shows that there are systematic differences between men and women in terms of confidence. So women tend to be less confident than men. And importantly, the research shows that it's not just about innate differences, that's actually to do with the day-to-day experiences that women have in the veterinary profession.
So just to enlarge on that point, how does that manifest itself? We've been hearing a lot about pay in there, but it's other things, isn't it? It's not just about money. We'll come on to that later. But how does it manifest itself, would we say, in the veterinary profession?
What we've found certainly within the study is the pay disparity within gender, but also there were those other areas around promotion, etc., that I think you found within.
Yeah, that's right. There seem to be differences in the seeming competence or competence of male and female vets, and so that's another way in which this sort of rears its head, per se, this crisis of sorts, if you'd like to call it that. But I do think it's important, as Michelle had noted, that this really isn't sort of an internal issue, per se, with women or men, really, but it's a matter of one's confidence coming from the outside in. It's how one is treated by others, and in fact the data suggests that both men and women's levels of confidence are very much impacted by the ways that they're treated by their colleagues. In fact, that does more to explain one's levels of confidence than their gender, per se. Of course, at the same time, there are these gendered ways in which men and women are sort of treated differently in the workforce.
And sort of flowing on from that then, let's explain your recent piece of work around pay, and were you guys surprised when you saw the results?
Yeah, so basic description of what we did in one study is we sort of asked employers and managers to review a recent performance evaluation of a vet in a clinical practice, and then give us some feedback about what you think of this vet, how competent do they seem, what would you pay them if they were in your practice, and then a number of questions about how you might treat them if they were employed in your practice. The key to this study was that while all the employers and managers saw the exact same performance evaluation, the name of the vet being evaluated changed. So half of the respondents were randomly assigned to see Mark and his performance evaluation, or Elizabeth and her performance evaluation, but in fact the two were described identically.
And the headline from that was $2,000 difference in the amount of money offered to the man or the woman. You probably weren't surprised, and that's probably quite sad, isn't it?
Yeah, no, so it wasn't terribly surprising to see some sort of pay disparity. That's something that I think a lot of other professions also deal with. I think something that was more unique about our finding was perhaps that this pay disparity didn't seem to occur across all respondents, but rather it was among those managers and employers who think that discrimination against women is no longer an issue that are the ones most likely to perpetuate this discrimination in terms of pay, perceptions of competence, and treatment.
And this isn't just about men discriminating against women, is it? This is women inadvertently discriminating against other women, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's society discriminating against women, so that we have societal stereotypes about what men and women are like, what success looks like, what leadership looks like, what competence looks like, and when you bring all of those together, we have women being evaluated as less competent, being paid less, and therefore feeling less confident. Now, as you say, there's all sorts of people that have these views. It isn't just men being horrible to women. It is these sort of internalized stereotypes. What is interesting, though, is that when you look at who thinks discrimination is still a problem, women feel that discrimination is still a problem. Men are more likely to say it isn't a problem anymore, and that is related to bias as well.
And How can we grow confidence in the profession? And at a time where the veterinary profession is facing a number of different challenges, how can we grow that, and why is it important that we do that? Who wants to pick that one up?
So I'm very conscious that I'm standing beside a psychologist and don't want to make generalisations, but if I did, we are very, very lucky in the veterinary profession in as much as the candidates that come through to veterinary schools are highly motivated, highly driven, intelligent and hard-working. But I think what can come with that is they demand a lot from themselves and set very high standards for themselves. And that means to some extent they may be more fragile than people who don't do that. And the take-home messages I took from your study is that a kind of reinforcement, a positive reinforcement, you're doing a good job, that you're valued, that people value your opinion, that everyday occurrence is actually very important for all of us in our day-to-day existence and how we feel that we're doing. We can't judge ourselves completely in a vacuum. We get feedback all the time, and that's really important. And if there are differences in how or who is getting that feedback, that's the key to this. And the most interesting part about the study was not that there was a gender pay gap. The most interesting part was the fact that people who thought there was no discrimination and who were really convinced there were no discrimination were most likely to have assess different people in different ways.
And sorry to ask this question, Ewan, and I know the vet schools take a bit of, it's trendy to say what are the vet schools doing about it, but what can the vet schools do to foster more confidence in the next generation of vets?
So that's a discussion that's actually going on in the vet schools. It's actually going on in terms of curriculum development. It's an active discussion with the students. So not only do we think about how we're doing leadership, we're doing confidence, we're promoting the vet-led team, we're talking about how people develop those skills with the students. But as I say, I think I'm very, very privileged. I'm constantly impressed by the talent we have amongst our student body, and that feeds into the profession. But I do think it needs to be nurtured. It needs to be nurtured at vet school, and it needs to be nurtured after vet school so that talent has all the potential and can realise all the potential as it has.
And what happens if we don't deal with this crisis?
Well, I think we've seen, the way the BVA got to here was through members telling us there is a challenge in the workforce. We are struggling to recruit and we're struggling to retain. And quite rightly, we're an evidence-based profession and we wanted to see why that was happening. We could identify the problems and what we needed was the next step. I think if we don't sort this out, we are letting down our whole profession, because there are hugely talented people coming in doing superb jobs that are very valued, that we need them to do, and we want them to have that work-life balance. We want them to be able to fulfill what they wanted to do, which is why they came into the profession in the first place. So if we can't get a grip of this, not only is it affecting our businesses, research, government, all the places that vets are integral, but it's actually letting down our profession and really letting down those people who want to be in this profession but want to be in a happy, thriving, sustainable profession where they have that work-life balance. And what's really exciting about this is actually there's so many things we can do. We need to embrace it, and actually we're human, so it's not a sort of I'm going to do confidence like this. It's actually how do I take what we've learned from the study to my practice, to my team, to my department, and engage with those people on a human level and make sure that I'm being equal, fair and transparent, but actually let's start reading what we've just learned about.
Fantastic. Obviously the profession's reeling under a recruitment crisis as well. Things like this are going to feed into that, aren't they? If it becomes not a toxic environment, but it's going to be more challenging to recruit new vets. They're not going to want to come, they don't want to be vets.
I think if we see it in a negative light like that, that's going to happen. If we see it as a positive light, which is what Vet Futures was, of the profession taking charge of its own future and say, this is a fantastic profession, actually our brand is really good, look at all these, like we were talking about, get these role models out, doing fantastic things, we've all done fantastic things in the profession, and say, look, we know there's problems, but we are doing it, we're positive. But if we're negative, then negativity will breed, but I'm feeling pretty positive.